Okay, so we're going to be solving formulas for specified ones. There are word problems on here. Don't panic, because the formulas are already written for you. They just have a sentence describing what the formula is. Okay, so it's not you having to set up the formula. Okay, so there are word problems in this one. Okay, so notes objective 7071. What formula is this? What is that called? Yeah, I know. Pythagorean theorem. Okay, so with Pythagorean theorem, when we use this, we're actually like solving for sides, right? Because there's an A side, a B side, and a C side. So we can actually solve for A, B, and C. Okay, so this isn't one of the problems that are in this, but we're just kind of getting this into our head. So in this section, they're going to tell you solve for A. So you have to isolate A, or solve for B, okay? And then solve for C, which we've kind of done that in the past when you solve for C, like the hypotenuse. We do the opposite, okay? So at the very end, when we plugged in A and B, and we're trying to solve for C, we would go through the order of operations. The last thing would be, what is the opposite of squaring C? Taking the what? Square root. Okay, so we just have to remember what our opposites are. So adding would be subtracting, multiplying would be dividing, squaring would be taking the square root. Okay, same thing with cube roots. Okay, so just as a practice, just to get this into our head, what if I said solve for, we're going to actually put this in your notes. Okay, if I'm solving for B, I need to do something with this first, which would be what? Subtract it to the other side, right? Because you got to get rid of it on one side, and what we do one side, we're going to do to the other side. So now I would have B squared equals C squared minus A squared. Okay, I still don't have B by itself, so I would do what? Square root. Okay, so when I take the square root of this side, then I also have to do it to this side. The square gets rid of the square root only, right? Which would leave B by itself. And then you can't take the square root of this just because it's got a positive negative, an adding, subtracting thing. If it was squished together, then yes, we could, okay? So you would just be done. You got the B by itself. So a lot of these you won't be able to simplify it all the way down. You're just trying to isolate that variable, okay? So hopefully that kind of gets it back into your head a little bit more complex equation. Are we good? Too bad. Okay. Number one. What do you still need it? Okay. You did? Okay. Okay, number one. So this is actually like starting into this section. Okay, so when you get the worksheet, it'll tell you which variable to solve for. Okay, so on this one, we're solving for B. And I'm just going to put okay, when we actually know the value of B, right, I would plug B in here, then I times it by 3, and then I take the cube root of it, and then I would divide by 2. So when we're solving it, because we don't know it, we always do whatever the last thing is, we do that first. Okay, well I said divide by 2 was the last thing we do, so that's the first thing we're going to do when we're solving. Okay, so divide by 2 opposite would be 2, times it by 2. So when I times it by 2, on this side, I've got to times it by 2 on this side, right? Okay, so now I have 2a equals, okay, this went away, and now I just have cube root of 3b. Okay, if you were paying attention at the beginning, I did what the last step would have been first. What would be the next thing to get the b by itself? Do what? I think I heard cube it, okay? So this is the cube root, right? So to get rid of the cube root, we've got to cube it. So what I do to one side, I'm actually going to do to the other side. So 2 times 2 would be 4, times 2 would be 8. Okay, and then the a is also cubed. Okay, like the one on the first page, cube and cube root cancel each other out, but it's left what's underneath. So we still have the 3b underneath. Okay, what would my last step be?
Divide by 3.
Divide by 3. Okay, so some of these, and when we're done, because now we've got b by itself. Okay, so b is equal to 8 cubed divided by 3. Some of these, be careful, you can simplify further. Okay, this doesn't have anything in common. If it was a 2, then yes, go further. or even a 6. You could simplify it. Okay, so be cautious with that. You good? Okay, next one. Not quite as friendly. Okay, so number 2 is t equals 1 over p. And then the second part, the whole thing is underneath the radical. So n minus k over 2b is underneath the radical. Okay, so on the worksheet, it tells us to solve for n. Okay, so just like the last one, if I did know n and I plugged it in, I would go n minus k first. So that means that's the very last thing I'm going to do. Then I would divide by 2b, and then I would take the cube root, okay, and then I would times it by this. So that means that this is the first thing I need to get rid of. Okay, so this is 1 over p times that. So opposite of that would be to divide. And when I divide on this side, remember it's keep dot flip. So when I divide on this side, I'm really flipping it to make it p over 1, which would get rid of it. Okay, but what I wrote on this side, I've also got to write on this side. So this is really t times p over 1. Okay, because we had t divided by 1 over p, and we flip right. Okay, so really this becomes TP. I'm going to erase this down here. Okay, so we've got TP together. You can just write it next to each other. And now we just have this left over, so we have the radical of n minus k over 2b. Okay, what would be the next thing I'd have to do? What? What'd you say? Right, we got to get rid of the radical. So opposite of square root would be to square it. Okay, so the square gets rid of the square root, but then we've got to do that on this side. So that means the t is squared and the p is squared, because both can get squared. The square gets rid of the square root. Okay, so now we have n minus k over 2b. Okay, what would be my next part? Times it by 2b, right? When I times it by this on this side, it gets rid of it. Then I've got to times it on this side. So we would have 2b t squared p squared equals n minus k. Last thing? Add k. So you would just move k over to the other side, change it from a negative to a positive. Okay, and then so we have 2b squared p squared plus k. Now we're done. Okay, so again, if you don't know what order, think about if you're plugging it in, what would the order be? And then that's whatever that very first order is, multiplying or timesing or subtracting, that's going to be your last when you actually go to solve it. Okay. I think this is the last one before we go into the story problem. Maybe. Yeah. Okay, this one I actually clipped it from the worksheet. So it tells you which one to solve for. So we're solving for n. What would be my first step? Times it by 2. Okay, so when I times it by 2 on this side, I've got to times it by 2 on this side. So I'd have 2m equals, now that went away. Now we've got the fourth root of 6m. What would be our next? Times it by 4, right? The exponent of 4. Get rid of the fourth root. Okay, so 2 times 2 would be 4, times 2 would be 8, times 2 would be 16. M to the fourth. Okay, the 4 gets rid of the fourth root, which leaves 6n. Last step. Divide by 6. So this is one of them that you're going to leave it as an improper fraction, but make sure you reduce it. Okay. So what can go to both of those? 2. Okay, so that would change that to 8n to the 4th. And divide that by 2, which would make it. So just be cautious of that, just to make sure you can or can't reduce. Okay, we're good? Okay. Now this is when you guys panic as you see words. Okay. So number 3, you're not writing this whole thing. You're only going to write the necessary stuff that we need. So the formula is right here. So it's E equals 150 rad P. Okay, now I'm going to read through this because this is the part that you're going to have to decide. Okay, well, the number that they gave me is either going to be plugged into the P or the E. Okay, it says where E represents the amount escaping per minute in gallons, and P represents the pressure in pounds per square inch. Okay, and it says what is the pressure of the gas when 550 gallons per minute? Where is that going to go? E. Because E is the amount escaping per minute, right? 550 gallons per minute. Okay, so we're plugging that in for the E. So 550 is being replaced for the E, and then we're writing okay, so now we're actually solving this down to simplify it. So I need to get the P by itself to solve for P. So what would be my first step? Divide by 150, right? This is 150 times radical P. Okay, so we're going to get rid of that first. Okay, we're not going to simplify it yet, just because we have to square. Okay, so to get rid of the radical, you would square it. Okay, so when I square on this side, it gets the P by itself. Okay, but now I'm going to square on this side. Okay, and I know a lot of you don't have your calculators out. So you would go 550 divided by 150, okay? And then whatever that number is, then you would hit to the second power. And a lot of you will have like a caret key that looks like an arrow thing. Some of you have a number with a variable. I can help you do that. Or you just times it by itself, okay? This one says, so make sure you're checking. A lot of them will ask for weeks, so they want you to round it to the nearest week, okay? This one says round your answer to the nearest 10, okay? So it ends up being like 13.4, and it keeps on going on, so you're just gonna write. And I'm not worried about your labels. You don't have to write pounds per whatever it is. Good? Okay, so those story problems, again, they're not bad. You just need to know which one you're plugging it in for, okay? And they have the word for word. So as long as you're reading, you plug it into the right spot. Okay. Oops. Okay, 84. Okay, so just writing the formula, S equals 14 rad 60 plus 63. Okay, and then we're just trying to figure out where I'm plugging in the 125. Okay, it says where S represents the total sales and T represents the time in weeks after release. How many weeks will pass before the product sells about 125 units? So the 125 is going in for what variable? S. Okay. And then we're solving for the one that's remaining. Okay, so I have 125. Got 14 minus 60 plus. Okay, what do you think our first step is? Subtract the 63. Okay, so you're actually going to go 125 minus 63 if we're going to get that number. What'd you get? 165 minus 63. Got what? 62. So we got 62. next one?
Divide by 14.
Divide by 14. Okay, now I want you to actually leave this, okay, because we're going to have to do something with the 6 that'll make it a little bit different. Okay, what do I do next? Square it to get rid of, so that we can get this guy, right? So we're going to square this. Okay, we're going to square that. There. Okay, so squaring 62. So 62 times 62, that goes ahead of the calculator. 3,600. Okay, squaring 14.
196.
196. Okay, then on this side, the square got rid of the square root, so we still have 16. This is why we're leaving this, you'll see in a minute. So this is 6 times t, so the opposite would be to divide by 6, right? But when I divide by 6 on this side to get rid of this, I'm really dividing by 6, and it's a fraction, so I have to keep dot flip. So it's not really 6 anymore, it becomes 1 over 6. Okay, so I'm just going to write it. Normally it'd be on this side, but I'm going to write it on this side. And this is why we like this. Obviously, 1 times that top number is still going to stay the same as that top number. Okay, 6 times 196. Okay, so I'm just going to rewrite it over here. So we've got 3,844 over 1,176. Now divide. You get 3.26, right? So you round up to 3.3. And this one up here, they're asking you to round it to the nearest week. So how many weeks would that be? 3. Okay. So it was 3.26. So week-wise, it's closer to the beginning of the week than to a next week. Okay, so it'd be 3. Good? Yes?
Are you going to keep the...
If you divided this, you would get a decimal that keeps on going on. It would be fine if you were actually multiplying by that number, then you could have left it. So if you should have this on your paper, like when you're doing it out. If you did that and then said, oh shoot, I'm now divided by a fraction, then just go back up one more step. Okay, I'm just pointing that to you because I knew we were going to do that. Because 1/6 isn't a terminating decimal, so it's hard to multiply by a non-terminating decimal. So that's why we leave it in fraction form. Okay, we good? Some of your calculators store the answers for you too. So, okay, almost done. Okay, number 86. Okay, so the formula is S equals 19 times 4t. And now we've got an exponent that has a 1/2, so we have to take a flashback to, I think, first semester, maybe when we learned about that, plus 42. Some of you I know have been doing this on Alex not too long ago. Okay, then our number down here is 49, so we need to figure out, are we plugging it in for the t or for the s? What are the total cells for 49 weeks? T, because the weeks is 49 instead of cells. We're trying to figure out the cells, so we're trying to solve for s. Okay, so 49 is going to go into the t spot. Okay, now we're going to leave it broken apart. I don't want you to go 4 times 49, just because it's easier to work with smaller numbers. Okay, so we have s equals 19, and I'm going to write this like this. Okay, so flashback to first semester. When we had an exponent and we were simplifying numbers in there, the 1/2, the 1/3, we actually have 2/3 and 3/5 and stuff like this. This bottom number is the radical, okay? So this really means that we are taking the square root. So if that was a 3, then we'd taken the cube root. Okay, but it's a 2. So we're going to take a square root of both of these that are in here. Okay, that just convert it to that. if there was a top number, then that means that would be your exponent. You would take it to that column. But because it's in a fraction format, it's talking about what type of radical it is. Okay, what is the square root of 4? 2. Square root of 49? 7. So really we're going 2 times 7, which would make that 14. Okay, so we're at this now. S equals 19 times 14 plus 42. Okay, so our next step would be to times it. Okay, so the 19 and the 14 gives us 266. And then your last step is going to be to add the 42. Yeah, 308. 308. Okay, so anytime you see the exponent and being in a fraction format, that's just telling you what type of radical you're going to take it to. Square root, cube root, fourth root. Okay, and I'll have quite a few of those on there. Okay, I don't know if that was the last one. That was the last one. Okay. Okay, Alex, notice how many days left? 7. Okay, so next Monday.
Okay, thank you.
Not I didn't know that. Very set
Oh,
Not over, but like year past.
How much is it?
It's test grade, so test is 60%.
it's a lot.
And it's 300, you haven't had a test, it's 374.
Yeah, I failed my 90% last semester. I do know.
Okay, obviously the story problem ones, just pay attention to which one you're plugging them into. You start off with exponents with fractions, so you're taking the square roots, right, of these numbers. I think all of them are square root, actually.
They can't be square root, just
Multiply it squared, so you can multiply it. 5 times 30. You might want to. And I'll get my key out too. So you can